Welcome, everyone, to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. I would like to thank all our great listeners, viewers, and supporters and sponsors for helping to make this podcast such a success. We are being heard and viewed in all 50 states, all provinces of Canada, and over 70 countries around the world on all major platforms and the podcast website. Please visit our website, it's a wrapwithrap.com, to find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and great products and services from our sponsors. This podcast features people who have overcome life's challenges and adversities, people who can inspire, motivate, and educate us on an assortment of topics. My guest today is Douglas Brinker. For Doug Brinker, stories of survival run deep. At the early ages of 8 and 10, he nearly lost his life. Later in life, Doug almost lost his life due to 2 suicide attempts. Now, Doug offers hope to those suffering and a positive light to crisis recovery. Doug is a disabled Iraq veteran, a veteran peer support specialist, Department of Michigan VFW mental health wellness director, author of his new book, which will be out in August 2024, My Dark Shadow, Living from a Suicidal Self to a Purpose of Hope. He holds a bachelor and master's degree of science and communication from Eastern Michigan University and is a 22-year member of Toastmasters and one of its contributing authors. Welcome, Doug, to the podcast. First, I want to thank you for your service to our country, and it's an honor to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, Ron. It's an honor to be here, and I continue to serve. I just wear a different uniform.
Well, we're glad to have you here. So that we can get a better idea of who Doug Brinker is, tell us about your growing up years and your near-fatal experiences at the young ages of 8 and 10.
Well, my growing up was much different than many of your listeners, perhaps. My growing up included being adopted at 2.5 by my grandparents and being raised by them until my grandma had passed away at 6 years old. And then my grandpa started to take ill, turned to the bottle, and then became to a point where he could not manage me and had to put me in a home for children for 5 years, from 8 to 13. But it was a Sunday summer afternoon where, before I was into that home, I went out to get the mail for him, stopped, looked both ways, crossed the street, and I was hit by a car.
Oh, no.
Bike, from my understanding, the bike rolled down the hill and my legs, God spared my legs from getting caught up in the spokes, or it could have been much worse. Fast forward, while in the home, I was bullied and I was pushed into the deep end at 10 years old, where I nearly drowned.
Was that a swimming pool or what?
Yes, in a swimming pool. The home actually had an outdoor swimming pool for the children.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my two early near-death experiences at 8 and 10 years old.
Who pulled you out of the pool?
I believe it was my day worker. So everybody has a day worker, kind of like a sponsor, chaperone, adult babysitter,
Yeah.
mentor. So yeah. So that was 51 years ago.
Well, I'm glad you made it out of the pool.
Yeah.
Today you wouldn't be here, that's for sure.
Must have inspired me to go into the Navy later on at 18, out of high school.
Did you learn to swim right after that incident?
Yeah, I learned how to swim real good.
Yeah.
Through scouting and then obviously in the Navy, I learned how to swim real quick.
Yeah. that bowling, did that continue the whole time, or did
Yeah,
that?
I experienced different forms of bullying. Mm, early on. I experienced, in the children's home from different age groups, inner city schools. I went to several different schools, and this is all in my book. Everything, all my details of my whole life are
Yeah.
in this 22 chapter book that will be out later in August.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that. Now, you joined the Navy out of high school.
Yes.
What were those years like for you?
Oh, those years were interesting because imagine being put in charge to be on the bridge of that Navy vessel in November of 1982, driving through the North Atlantic in 40-foot waves, 20-foot swells, 45-degree rolls for 2 days en
Wow.
route to Beirut, Lebanon for the multi peacekeeping mission. That was what I consider life number three, that I could have easily been lost to Davy Jones's locker.
Oh, absolutely. 40-foot waves, that must have been rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
And I bet being in the Navy, I guess you get used to that. You're
you do.
no Dramamine or anything,
Yeah,
right? Just kind of
you,
tough it out.
yeah. You walk like this when you walk down
Yeah.
the down the ship.
Yeah.
But I learned, the things that I learned while in the Navy, even though there was some forms of bullying and other things, I still had a great time. I got to go at 19, 20 years old. I got to go to Mombasa, Africa, Palma, Spain. I got to see the late Pope John Paul give mass in 14 different languages when I went to Italy. I went
Wow.
to the Maldive Islands, which today, if you search it, it's much better than it was in 1983.
Yeah.
But I've been all over the world because of the Navy.
Oh, sure. Now, were you in kind of, from what I understand, well, you got discharged in 1984,
Mhm.
and I believe you become what they call a person in a dark place, unable to reconnect with society. Can
Right.
you tell us about that time and specifically touch upon August of 1999?
So I came out of the Navy November 16th, 1984, came back home to Jackson, Michigan, the USA, and went back to first, I took a year of unemployment from the Navy. And then I went back to just menial old jobs. I didn't have college education. I didn't participate in any, I didn't qualify for GI Bill education benefits. And so I became just a $3.35 wage earner from 1984 to 19, 1999.
Yeah.
I had numerous relationships that would start and stop with females. And, I never felt that I had purpose. I never felt that why am I existing on this planet? I felt like I was just taking up space, absorbing oxygen, taking up space, helping everybody else have the life that they want by making them all the money. And through all of that, I just, the last straw that led up to August 7th, 1999, to my best recollection, was I was engaged to get married on I believe it was Easter, sometime around the Easter period. I had also had back surgery earlier in May, and I was laid up. And then I found out the job that I was currently working fired me. And so I didn't have a job to go back to. So with now a fiance breaking up with me, a job dismissing me, I had no reason to live in my eyes.
You were in a lot of pain.
I was in a lot of dark, deep pain.
Yeah.
And I I didn't do it by plan. That night that I walked into that bar, but it just happened. And I spent then the next 4, 5, 6 hours in the darkest corner of the bar where I could not be bothered, and continued to consume. But I had also done something else. I had taken all of my depression medication because I was also severely depressed
And
after the
that
breakup of the fiance.
alcohol, yeah, that mixed with that, and that's all she
Deadly
wrote.
cocktail.
Yeah.
And my best friend, who, if it wasn't for him coming looking for me, obviously this podcast
Yeah.
appearance would not be taking place. It was him that found me. I don't know what hour it was. All I remember was I remember being sobered up by the hospital ER staff pouring liquid charcoal into my stomach.
Yeah. Well, thank God he was looking for you and
Yeah.
he caught you in time. Doug, why do you think many veterans have trouble reconnecting to civilian life?
I believe, in my opinion, that our society and the organizations involved for reconnecting our active duty personnel back to the veteran community don't do enough. They give them the transition week where they go through and do all of these little steps, but they don't give them a book for success. They don't say, you're going back home to your ex home of record, whatever it is, Jackson, Michigan. Here is a book of all the resources: housing, food, transportation, mental health, you name it, A to Z support.
Yeah.
And I believe, in my opinion, if something was to be done where they even maybe had a mentor, the local veteran affairs office could buddy a veteran that has been well established in the community with a new returning veteran status individual, and spend 30, 60, 90 days, not every day, maybe once a week, check in with that person,
Sure.
see what they need, see how they're starting to readjust to civilian life again. Because
Now,
it's all about routine in the military.
yeah. Now you just touched upon the mentor, which is a
Mhm.
great idea. Is that being done now?
I
Uh,
don't know what's being done.
oh,
I have a Marine veteran son that's been out now just about 1 year from
yeah.
Camp Lejeune,
Yeah.
and he don't have a mentor.
Okay.
It's dad. Dad is his, I'm doing the mentoring.
Yeah.
I'm making
Well,
sure that he's getting acclimated back to civilian life.
that's a great idea, and obviously, from what you're telling me, it's probably not being done.
Probably not.
Yeah.
They'll say they don't have the volunteers to do it, or
Yeah.
the time, or the
Yeah.
the gray area politics.
Yeah. Now in February 2001, you try another a second attempt on your life with a knife. Can you tell us about that?
So yeah, you know, therapy is strictly volunteer.
Right.
You're not mandated to go to therapy. You're not mandated to take your medication.
Yeah.
However, I believe, and here's Doug's narrow-mindedness at that time is twofold. Is I chose when I wanted to take the meds and go to therapy, not when I needed to take the meds and go to therapy. I didn't have peer support in place like we do today. If we would have had peer support in 2001 instead of 2005 when the peer support movement began, if we would have had that in place in 1999, 2001 possibly, most likely, might not have happened, because I
Yeah.
would have had supports of people who have lived experience, been there, done that, and now contribute positively back to society.
The peer support you're talking about, is that something that's mandated or for certain people or what? How does that
It,
work?
it's state by state. It's agencies who choose to participate and have a peer support specialist or a peer recovery coach program from people who have a mental illness, have been in recovery for at least 1 year, and are constantly working and educating themselves to strengthen not only their own recovery, but help others, fellow peers along the way.
Okay, but that's on a state by state basis.
That's on a by state basis.
Okay. So some states there might not be anything like that.
There may not be, I don't know.
Okay.
Michigan has a phenomenal program.
Oh, that's great. 2002, you enlist in the Michigan National Guard and you served in Iraq, but you developed a staph infection in 2004. What was that time period like?
So after I had attempted to cut my wrist and healed from that, I needed discipline back in my life. I didn't have discipline. And I re-entered the Michigan Army National Guard in October of 2002 under special waivers from everything that I had experienced mentally
Right.
years prior. And I volunteered to deploy in 2003 when another unit was activated. They asked for what they call detachment placements, where they pull from other units to fill the MTO requirement for the activated unit. And so I did that and volunteered and deployed. Spring of 2004, we arrived after going through 45 below training in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. We
Yeah.
arrived in Kuwait at 87 degrees the same day.
Wow.
So, yeah, it
Oh,
was like 18 degrees when we got on the plane, and it was 87 when we got off the plane in Kuwait City.
wow.
And we drove our trucks up through Kuwait into Iraq. We stayed where it was believed Abraham once stayed. And yeah, that whole area is very biblical.
Yeah.
And so we arrived in camp April 8th, Memorial Day 2004. I was a truck driver, and we were getting up to get ready for our next mission. And I stood up and went to take a step out of my bunk, and I fell over. thought nothing of it. I'm 6'4". The bunk is only about 5 foot. Maybe my legs went to sleep. Collected myself, took a couple more steps, bam, down again. Okay, something's wrong now.
Yeah.
Never looked at my legs, got dressed, went to my squat.
Let me take a moment out of the podcast to tell you about our guest and supporter of the podcast, Dr. Laura Gabanian's new book, Common Wisdom: 8 Scientific Elements of a Meaningful Life. I have read this book and must admit that to have the knowledge that this book exists and not read it would be a loss. Dr. Laura, who is a world-renowned physician and researcher, interviewed 60 wise adults across North America and defined wisdom as 8 elements. These 8 elements are the secret ingredients to living a life of joy and success. This is one of those books that you think, has this ever been written before? The book is very reader-friendly, bite-sized, to the point, easily digestible, yet profound and relatable. Along the way, the book reserves a place for the reader to write their reaction to each concept so they can revisit it later. While rooted in scientific research, this book is beautifully written in a way that makes the profound insights accessible and relatable to everyone. It's not just a study, it's a secret formula for achieving happiness and success. Hopefully, parents would encourage their children to read this book to enrich their lives going forward. I encourage you to give yourself and your friends and family the gift of learning and move towards the light of wisdom. You will not be disappointed purchasing this book. This book can transform your life. The book is available from Amazon in hardcover, paperback, audiobook, and Kindle formats. Information about the book will be listed in the podcast notes.
Leader, went to my platoon sergeant, went to the truck master, got a chit to get sent up to sick call, arrived in sick call. The sergeant at the desk took my temp, said, "Sergeant, are you feeling okay?" And I said, "Yeah, other than I can't figure out why I keep falling over." He said, "Well, you probably shouldn't be feeling good because you have 104 temp." Now,
Wow.
mind you, in Iraq, 8 a.m., the temp has already started at 105 or more.
Yeah.
So you're
I,
already acclimated to
I
that kind of
mean,
temperature.
you're lucky you're alive. Hypothermia.
Yeah. So he said, "Hold on just a second."
Yeah.
He went back, got the colonel. Colonel called me back. His whole medical staff came in. He said, "Sergeant, drop your trousers." When I dropped him, he's like, "Sergeant?" "Yes, sir." "Have you looked at your legs this morning?" "No, sir." "You might want to do that." When I looked down, from my knee to my ankle was as red as a stop sign. The heat could be felt 6 inches off my chin bone, my shins.
Yeah.
They measured the leg at 18.6 inches in diameter with a 10.5 diameter in my ankle. Now, your ankles are not 10.5 unless you're unfortunately overweight.
Yeah.
They automatically put me in the field cache. They started shots of Ansef on both sides of my stomach to prevent blood clotting. The staph infection had climbed up through my waist. My lymph nodes were swelled up as big as my fist. It already started to go into my other leg on my right side. The colonel told me that if I would have waited a few more hours and it found a spot through my waist, I would have suffered a fatal heart attack, a fatal stroke, a fatal blood clot, or they would have been forced to cut my leg off at my knee to save my life.
So you never felt any of this
No,
before that? Wow.
never felt. And they believe it was about 2 weeks prior, it started to brew in my system, all from a scrape on the end of my big left toe from jumping in and out of the truck during ambush attacks. The bacteria is so deadly that it got through that abrasion break and started to fester for a couple of weeks.
Do you think it was from the sand there or what?
Yes. Yeah, I was in the sand all the time,
Okay.
all the time.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's all kinds of bugs in the sand and
You got scorpions, you've got camel spiders. The
yeah.
Iraqis do their business in the sand because in Iraq, their culture of the bathroom is much different than our culture. If we
Right.
go to the bathroom outside, we get arrested.
Yeah.
Their culture, it's common.
Yeah. Uh, so I guess they medevaced you to Germany and then you went to Fort Knox and then you were eventually medically retired.
Yeah, they medevaced me June 3rd, 2004 to Landstuhl Hospital in Germany, where I spent 5 days. The only benefit that I got to do the last day, I got to go take a cab to Liechtenstein, and I got to go to the oldest castle in the history of Germany. And they from there they medevac me to Andrews Air Force Base, from
Yeah.
Andrews to Scott Air Force Base in Illinois for 5 days, and then from Scott Air Force Base to Fort Knox, Kentucky, June 16th. Actually, my Marine veteran's son's birthday, I arrived in Fort Knox, and I was in ICU or special hold area for several days because they felt they had an outbreak case in the hospital.
You sound like a cat with 9 lives, Doug.
I believe I am on my 8th life
Yeah.
right now at 61.
Now you later attend college and you graduate with a business administration and marketing degree. And in 2014, you graduate with a master's in communication from Eastern Michigan University. What did you pursue after you graduated?
So my college was, I started at Jackson Community College here in Jackson, Michigan, with my associates in business administration and certificate of marketing. Then 2009 September, I transferred over to Eastern to originally begin a program of study in marketing. However, if anybody has ever taken business statistics, will know my pain to
Not a
get
fun
out of
course.
marketing program real quick if you don't like math or fancy letters and numbers and these devices and everything.
Yeah.
So I changed to communication. Figured I'm a Toastmaster. Toastmasters is a communication leadership organization where leaders are made for now 100 years this year. And so I pursued the communication and I excelled in it quite rather, fast. I took over 65 different types of communication classes through my bachelor and my master's program. In 2014, I was allowed to walk because I promised to finish the last 3 credits. Unfortunately, my mother took ill and she died in 2015. Yes, 2015, July.
Uh,
And so I took a hardship to finish because I had to help my stepdad. And, mentally, I was checked out a little bit. And so the school sent me a letter the spring of 2020 during COVID. Return or start the program over. So I started the program. I returned in September of 20, and April of 2021, I finished my master's program from Eastern Michigan.
okay, so in 2016, you founded Brinker Communication Consulting slash Inspirational Services. Now you rebranded to Beacon for Hope to work with veterans, active duty servicemen and women, and teens as well. Tell us about the programs you offer and your success rate. What is it you do?
So I touch people's heartstrings. I get them where it matters the most, is from their heart and their head. And when I first started, I was on the path to work with organizations to teach them how to improve their internal customer, which is the employee, so the external customer factor would improve. Because I found in my early studies that customer satisfaction, both internally and externally, affect the bottom line. That didn't really get me nowhere. And since I've rebranded to Beacon for Hope, which is the name of my speaking business and the name on my beautiful ocean blue Jeep, I have had the blessings of God to speak in Lion clubs, my VFWs, the department, and any platform that will now have me. And I've been able and fortunate to go into schools during school leadership day and work with the 7th and 8th graders. And when I get up and share my story of recovery at the end of the session, when everyone else is left, there's been a young child that will come up and say, "You said something that helped me because I've felt suicidal." And then we have to, obviously, mandated reporter, we have to contact the school leadership and let them know. We have a lot of hurting young men and women, future leaders, sitting in our schools every day
Yeah.
that they're hurting. In my county alone, 23 young people under 19 take their life on average every year.
Wow.
Under 19, as young in my county as 9 years old. So my message, the Beacon for Hope, hope stands for helping one person every day. If we can change the landscape of helping one person every day, see that they matter, see that they have purpose, see that they have value, see that they are important to society for contributions, we change how they feel about themselves. And then eventually, those people hurting become success stories like me.
Is Beacon for Hope pretty much obviously based in Michigan, but do you get people from only that area or other areas as well?
I am open to go international.
Okay, so you can do it remotely.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I have. I was a guest on the Speakers Bureau in Philippines a few years ago from a good friend of mine who runs that program, and he interviewed me. And so then that broadcast reached all of his listeners and viewers in the Philippines.
That's
And
great.
13 Philippine celebrities, actors, sports figures take their life on average every year as well.
Wow. No idea.
That's
Uh
just in the Philippines.
yeah, yeah, that's unbelievable. Doug, what are some of the main causes affecting the veterans leading to these suicides? And what can, in your opinion, be done to help this situation?
Those are very thought out questions that have many layers like an onion, because no situation with any veteran or young person or LGBTQ or minority is the same.
Yeah.
Everybody's trauma, everybody's crisis, everybody's dark shadow looks different for
Yeah.
each one of us. And for the veteran community, I, I I've dealt with it. We just had a past post commander from my VFW post took his life nearly 9 months ago. And we don't we don't educate everybody to pay attention to the simple signs that people emanate. I'm sure there probably was some kind of a sign that I was emanating August 5th, August 6th, even the morning of August 7th, 1999. But if nobody knows, they can't ask you, are you okay? And in a lot of exercises with veterans, veterans know that it's all about pride, honor, dignity, respect. It's the core values of what the military teaches young men and women going in.
Yeah.
And when a veteran is pushed into that corner, into that shadow, if they don't have the supports, be it peer support, be it people won't stigmatize them, won't condemn them for asking, hey, I don't feel safe. I need help.
Yeah.
I think our society is plagued and has been for 50, 60, 80 years over the whole suicide landscape. I mean, we're probably talking 50 million people since the 30s have probably taken their life.
Wow. That's I mean
And
that number's just astronomical.
I mean, if you think about it, if you think about the numbers that are reported,
Yeah.
and if you think about from just a veteran, I mean, the average 22. But we know realistically the unreporteds that don't get recorded on a death certificate.
Sure.
And to your point about the veterans, if they have so much pride, they're not, it's below them.
It can be very difficult to get a face-to-face therapy appointment these days for those who need it. It can be expensive, difficult to squeeze a visit in your hectic schedule, not to mention how lonely and unsupported you can feel in between sessions and how you just seem to forget all the things your therapist told you since your last visit. No more. Therapy on your terms is now available through onlinetherapy.com. Your personal therapist will be by your side from start to finish, guiding you to a happier you through the sections, worksheets, unlimited messaging, and live sessions available as video, voice only, or text chat. You can do this from wherever you are in the world. Each section includes all the information and hands-on tools that you need to identify, challenge, and overcome your problems. In each worksheet, you will answer questions and get valuable hands-on tools and tips from your therapist on a daily basis. Each week, you will have access to a 45-minute live therapy session with your therapist via video, voice only, or text, providing a perfect opportunity to receive instant guidance and support. You can always send your therapist a message with any questions or thoughts. To start, choose your area of concern, including but not limited to anxiety, depression, OCD, PTSD, stress, anger management, couples therapy, family issues, panic attack, ADHD, chronic pain, eating disorders, abuse, and trauma, and get matched with your therapist. Choose the subscription plan that best suits your needs, starting at just $40 a week. OnlineTherapy.com has received an average rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars. Please click the link in the podcast notes or below this video ad for detailed information and to order and start your therapy journey today to become a happier you.
To ask for help because they don't want to ruin the family name. They don't want to be a martyr in the community to a point where people won't have any respect for them anymore because they have a weakness
Yeah.
mentally for a moment.
Yeah.
And I think, in my opinion, and I immerse myself here in Michigan, I'm on the Governor's Challenge Committee for Lethal Means for overprescribing psychotropic medications. I'm part of the Jackson County Military Coalition. I'm part of the Suicide Coalition. I'm constantly, I even attended Understanding Suicide and Homeless Veterans webinar earlier today. There's a population right there in itself. My county alone, we have 27 homeless veterans. That's just totally unsatisfactory.
Yeah, totally unacceptable.
There are men and women, and it's across the country, not just in
Oh,
Jackson,
yeah.
Michigan. It's unacceptable. Now, yes, some do, like anyone, some do choose to be homeless for a variety of reasons. But the ones that don't choose it get forced into it sometimes. And I believe, in my heart of hearts, if we do more and actually do more, not just say more, we're going to take and help a lot more lives.
Doug, which group of veterans today are at most risk? And how many veteran suicides are there on a daily basis?
Oh, that's they say the people that track the numbers.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the great organizations doing great work across this country. They say the average is 22. The older veterans with no family, with no purpose, with no supports and connections are the next demographics of white males over 70 living alone as a widow, out disconnected from the community per se, living out in the sticks or what have you, have no support, have no involvement with military service organizations like the Legion, the VFW, the Vietnam Veterans of America, DAV, and such. That's the next population that's at risk because they're struggling financially to pay housing, to pay $300 for a medication to keep their heart pumping, or to feed themselves. I'd be willing to bet that if we went out and took a survey of 10,000 veterans over 70, how often do you eat? Many of them, I believe, are going to say just once a day because the other money's got to pay for the $200 of medication they got to take every day so they can still live.
Don't they get their medication from the VA system?
If they are service connected. If you are service connected, over 50%, you get free medication.
Okay.
But if you're under 50 or maybe 40%, something, I know they're changing the landscape of how that looks at. But if you have no service connected disabilities, then you're not getting medication now. We know just as of last week, with the passing, with the new bill allowing all veterans, stateside and deployed, if they were exposed to any toxins whatsoever, are now eligible to enroll in VA healthcare service.
Is that the PACT Act we're talking about?
Yeah, the PACT
Okay.
Act.
Okay. Because I'm a male breast cancer survivor. I don't know if you knew that or not. I had it
No.
twice. Yeah, I had it twice. And
Wow.
We do a lot of work. I'm in a group called malebreastcancerhappens.org.
Uh-huh.
And we do a lot of work with veterans that were at Camp Lejeune. So I've heard of the PAC Act, and thank God that got
Yeah.
passed.
I'm good friends with Kevin Hensley, who was one of those top dogs that with John Stewart spent countless hours lobbying
Yeah.
for that to get passed.
Yeah.
And
We work with a fella named Mike Partain. I don't know if you know him or not.
I've heard the name.
Okay. Yeah.
Now,
Uh,
Kevin's in a book, The Promise, with the other three survivors with the burn pits because he suffers.
yeah.
And but to your numbers, we know we hear 22 a day. Uh, I know if we uncover all the unreporteds, it's probably closer to 40 a day.
Is part of that problem with the money, the veterans having to wait for their money?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a backlog, and
Yeah.
is that getting any better to your knowledge?
There's
No.
a million claims at the Board of Veteran Appeals now.
Okay.
Now some get approved right away, some get, and there's different stages of that approval process. Like, for example, I'm rated at 90%. I've been waiting 3 years for my decision. What happens if it takes another 5 years? What if I die
Yeah.
in 4 years and in 2 days after I die, they award me my compensation?
Yeah. And I have a relative that's in a similar situation where it's just a matter of
Mhm.
pretty much they just give up. They just say to
They
heck with
give
it.
up, or they get so aggravated they take a gun out and they
Yeah.
shoot, or
Yeah.
take a rope and put it up over the rafters and hang themselves or
Yeah.
overdose or something. Realistically, the numbers we're talking near probably, if you uncover the reality of numbers, and it don't matter whether it's one veteran's suicide
No.
or a
Each one's a
thousand
each one's a
veterans suicide,
tragedy.
it's too many.
Yeah.
But it looks at, goes back to the onion effect. We have to peel back the layers and find out what's the underlying issue. Just like in mental health, they
Yeah.
do an intake and they ask a lot of questions to peel back that onion of someone's life.
Doug, how hard was it to make yourself vulnerable, to do your work with the veterans in need, and to write your book and put yourself out there?
Well, thanks to Toastmasters, I publicly came out 7 years this coming September and shared my story publicly in front of over 200 people at a suicide fundraising event here in Jackson, which, by the way, my stepdad was in attendance and came up and cried and started hugging me because he never knew. I guess that's how good I can keep a secret from anybody.
Yeah, I've heard that from, we've had several
Even the
people.
cat doesn't know.
Yeah, we've heard from several people on this podcast, and the not only do we touch on this subject a lot, but we also have a Facebook group,
Okay.
and we try to keep everybody positive,
Yep.
and we do talk about it, and we stress the fact you can't do it alone.
No.
You need help.
No.
You need help.
And
You got
here's
to ask for it.
with me coming out 7 years ago that I had tempted, it allowed me to know that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
I wear all of this, not because it looks cool. I wear this as reminders, including this band that says, "Do not give in to the war within." And on the inside, I have my 20-year anniversary. And I keep that on 24/7. And I also have "We Can Stop Suicide" from the AFSP. I have a "Never, Never, Never Give Up" band. I have constant reminders. But to your point, why I wrote the book, it took a while. I wrote right away. I wrote 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I wrote the initial beginnings of it. But then I put it down because my editor said you have to take the reader down to the basement. You have to give reason to the reader why you've climbed out of the basement to where you are today. And I went through peer support training and learned it's not about the method that's important. It's about recovery and resiliency. And so I wrestled for 2.5 years. I put the book away for 2.5, almost 3 years, and picked it up last year and put my methods in there. But I've also put as a disclaimer that some content in this book may traumatize or re-traumatize in these pages. Know that there's always help and hope by going to your nearest mental health agency emergency room, calling 988, pressing 1 if you're a veteran, pressing 2 if you speak Spanish. And I finished that book. And that closes all the dark chapters, but also the last 7, 8 chapters are all my successes. My children, my boys being born, me completing a master's degree at 57 years old, working for the very same mental health agency who tried to treat me originally in September of 1999. I am still employed there 6 years later.
You came full circle.
Full circle.
Full circle. Doug, what can you tell our audience out there that are dealing with life's challenges and adversities to get past them and live a happy, productive life?
If I could have your listeners close their eyes, place their hand over their heart, and listen to the heartbeat. You hear that?
Yeah.
That's life. That's purpose. Each one of us has purpose to live until the higher being calls us home. Living a dark shadow, leaving family, community, employees, neighbors left to grieve the rest of their life over you taking your life is not worth it. You are taking a permanent problem to a temporary, you're taking a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If I can get through everything that I've been through since 2.5 years old, so can you.
Profound words and very well said. Doug, how can people contact you? If they want to get a hold of you?
People can go to douglasbrinker.com, my website. They can contact me through Beacon for Hope on Facebook page, LinkedIn. They can contact me through email. They can call. I have helped young Marine veterans, 25 years old, at 3 o'clock in the morning several years ago, who I never knew. He never knew me. But he reached out to me, and after a 2.5 hour conversation, he felt in a safer place today. He's engaged to get married, living a productive life.
Wow.
Because someone took the time
Yeah.
to have their phone available 24/7. And that's what I do for any veteran and family member of a veteran, is my phone's always on, because I would rather give up some hours of sleep now than to read about your life being taken while I was sleeping.
Can you give out that number, please?
517-499-0926. And of course, you can always call 988, press 1 if you're a veteran.
Press 1 for a veteran. Okay. That's 517-499-0926. I will put that in the podcast notes. And I hope to have you back with the podcast. We talked about that offline when that book comes out. We're going to talk about that and see what we can do for you. I want to thank you, Doug, for being on the podcast and enlightening all of us to this issue. And I wish you the best with your work and much success on the new book. So thanks once again for being here.
Thank you. And that book will be available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, and there will be a big fancy book signing once that does get
Amazon,
released.
Barnes and Noble, yes, and the podcast will be connected with that as well to spur sales on, get that book to as many people as we can.
And 50% of all the sales will go back into suicide prevention programs because it isn't about the money.
Right.
It's about saving lives.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. For those who have comments and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at itsarap@gmail.com. We have our Facebook group. We have a lot of veterans in our Facebook group. It's a Wrap with Rap, so feel free to join us. It's a private group. You put your name in there and I'll send you an invite. Instagram is It's a Wrap with Rap podcast. We're on Twitter or X at Rapper, WRAPPER 130. Our website is itsarapwithrap.com. And we have a YouTube channel. All the episodes are on YouTube. It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast, uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening. Please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.